I'm Sophia Morgan, 32, and 3 months ago I was sitting on a bench in Central Park with everything I owned stuffed into one backpack. The crisp autumn air bit through my thin jacket as I contemplated how far I'd fallen from my former life with Nathan. A well-dressed man approached, making me instantly wary. "Are you Sophia Morgan? I've been looking for you." My heart raced, thinking he was either a debt collector or hired by my ex. Instead, he said something that changed everything. "Your uncle Walter passed away. You've inherited $47 million." I nearly laughed. The uncle I hadn't seen in 15 years had just catapulted me from homeless to heiress in a single sentence. If you're watching this from anywhere in the world right now, I want to thank you for clicking on my story. It's not easy sharing how I went from sleeping on park benches to where I am today, but I believe what happened to me might help someone else facing rock bottom. If my journey of betrayal and eventual justice resonates with you, please consider subscribing to hear more stories like mine. The support from this community has been my lifeline through everything I'm about to share. Before homelessness, I was Sophia Morgan, marketing executive at Archer & Klein, one of Manhattan's most prestigious firms. I'd built my career over 8 years while balancing my 10-year marriage to Nathan Harrison, a charming investment banker at Hamilton Reed. We lived in an elegant brownstone in Brooklyn, vacationed in the Hamptons, and were the picture-perfect couple, according to our Instagram. But behind closed doors, our relationship had been deteriorating for years. The control started subtly. Nathan convinced me to merge our finances for tax purposes, then gradually took over all financial decisions. He questioned every purchase I made, regardless of how small. When I received a promotion, instead of celebrating, he suggested my boss must have ulterior motives. "No one gives raises in this economy without expecting something in return," he said, planting seeds of doubt that would later bloom into full insecurity. Looking back, I can identify the exact moment everything changed. It was my company's Christmas party, 3 years ago. I was wearing a red dress. Nathan had reluctantly approved after telling me my first 3 choices were too revealing or unflattering. I excused myself to use the restroom and took a wrong turn, opening the door to what I thought was an empty office. Instead, I found Nathan with his pants around his ankles, and my best friend Jennifer bent over the desk. The image is seared into my brain. Jennifer's shocked face turning toward me, her lipstick smeared, and Nathan's expression not of guilt but annoyance at being interrupted. "Just give us a minute," he said, as if I'd walked in on him taking a business call. I fled the party and took a taxi home, where I packed a bag and went to a hotel. Nathan didn't return my calls that night. When he finally came home the next day, he turned everything around on me. "If you hadn't been so focused on your career, I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere," he said. "Jennifer listens to me. She supports me. When was the last time you asked about my day?" Somehow, through tears and manipulation, we reconciled. I believed we could work through it with counseling. What I didn't know was that Nathan had already begun systematically dismantling my life. 3 weeks later, I was called into my boss's office. There had been a data breach, and confidential client information had been sent to a competitor. My company email was the source. I was suspended pending investigation, then fired once evidence mounted. I later discovered Nathan had access to my passwords and had methodically framed me, destroying my professional reputation. When I finally filed for divorce 6 months later, after discovering the affair was ongoing, Nathan was prepared. He'd hired Barnett and Crane, the most aggressive divorce attorneys in the city, while I could barely afford a paralegal. He'd been transferring our joint assets into accounts I couldn't access, and had frozen our shared credit cards the day after I served him papers. In court, Nathan's lawyers painted me as unstable, unemployed, and untrustworthy. They brought up the data breach as evidence of my unethical behavior. My former colleagues, afraid of association with me, refused to testify on my behalf. Even our mutual friends chose sides, and almost all chose Nathan. He was, after all, still successful and charming in public. I was increasingly desperate and emotional. The settlement was brutal. Despite contributing to our household income for a decade, I received almost nothing. Nathan's lawyers argued that my unemployment and damaged reputation were self-inflicted. The judge, a golf buddy of Nathan's father, was unsympathetic. After legal fees, I had enough money to last 3 months. I applied for jobs in marketing, but Nathan's smear campaign was thorough. No one would hire me. I tried retail, waitressing, anything, but New York's job market was saturated, and my spiral into depression made interviews difficult. Without references from my last job, doors closed before they opened. I downsized from a small apartment to a shared room, then to a shelter when my money ran out. The shelter had a 30-day maximum stay policy. When my time was up, I found myself on the streets of New York, a city I once conquered in Louboutins. The first night outside, I cried until sunrise. The second night, I was too exhausted to cry. By the third week, I developed a routine. Public libraries during the day for warmth and bathrooms, parks or subway stations at night when weather permitted. I learned which fast food restaurants wouldn't chase you out if you nursed a small coffee for hours. The hardest part wasn't the physical discomfort, though that was substantial. It was the invisibility. People I'd once networked with at industry events walked past me without recognition. Once, Jennifer and Nathan walked within 10 feet of me outside a restaurant. Jennifer was wearing a diamond bracelet I recognized as a gift I'd received from Nathan on our 5th anniversary. Throughout this nightmare, I occasionally thought about my Uncle Walter, my father's brother, who had moved to Europe when I was a teenager. He was the black sheep of the family, eccentric and estranged from my father after a business disagreement. I remembered him as kind but distant, sending me strange birthday gifts like stocks instead of toys, and books about investing instead of typical teen novels. We lost contact after my parents died in a car accident 5 years ago. I never imagined he was watching my life unravel from afar, or that he would become my unlikely savior. "I understand your skepticism, Miss Morgan," said Lawrence Phillips, the well-dressed man who had found me on the park bench. We were sitting in a nearby cafe, my backpack clutched tightly between my feet. "I would be suspicious, too, in your position." Lawrence slid his business card across the table. "Lawrence Phillips, Blackwood and Phillips Law Firm. I specialize in estate management and have handled your uncle's affairs for 20 years. I examined the embossed card, still unconvinced. "How did you find me?" "Your uncle had a team tracking you. He was thorough." Lawrence opened his briefcase and removed several documents. "Your Uncle Walter passed 3 weeks ago. Pancreatic cancer. He was very specific about finding you immediately, regardless of your circumstances." I skimmed the papers, my hands trembling slightly. They appeared legitimate, with official seals and Walter's distinctive signature. "I haven't seen or spoken to Uncle Walter since I was 17. Yet he followed your career with great interest," Lawrence said. "He was quite proud of your marketing campaigns at Archer and Klein, particularly the Westfield account." This detail startled me. The Westfield campaign had been my breakthrough project, earning me my first industry award. It wasn't something a scammer would easily know. "Walter and your father had their differences," Lawrence continued, "but he always saw himself in you, the family outsider who forged their own path. Why wait until now? Why not contact me before?" I gestured to my unwashed clothes and disheveled appearance. Lawrence's expression softened slightly. "Walter believed in self-reliance. He wanted you to succeed on your own terms. However, when his investigators reported your situation after the divorce, he began making arrangements. Unfortunately, his illness progressed faster than expected." Lawrence flagged down the waiter and ordered coffee and sandwiches. When I hesitated, he added, "Your uncle is paying. Or rather, you are now." After eating my first proper meal in days, Lawrence took me to the Peninsula Hotel. I stood awkwardly in the ornate lobby, acutely aware of my appearance and smell. The receptionist's eyes widened slightly, but Lawrence handled everything with practiced ease. "A suite has been arranged indefinitely," he explained, handing me a key card. "We'll meet tomorrow at our offices to begin the formal process." In the elevator, I asked the question that had been burning in my mind. "How much?" Lawrence cleared his throat. "The total estate is valued at approximately $47 million. This includes liquid assets, real estate holdings across Europe, and investment portfolios. The elevator dinged, saving me from having to respond. I couldn't have spoken anyway. My throat had closed with emotion. The suite was larger than my former apartment. I stood frozen in the entryway until Lawrence gently guided me inside. There are clothes in the closet, various sizes, but something should fit. Room service is available 24 hours. Get some rest, Miss Morgan. Tomorrow will be a full day. After he left, I remained standing, afraid to touch anything. Finally, I approached the bathroom, catching my reflection in the mirror. A gaunt, haunted woman with dull eyes stared back. I barely recognized myself. The shower was my breaking point. As hot water cascaded over me for the first time in weeks, I slid down the marble wall and sobbed. I scrubbed my skin until it was raw, washed my hair 3 times, and stayed until the water ran cold, as if trying to wash away not just the grime but the past year itself. Wrapped in a plush hotel robe, I surveyed the food options. I ordered soup, afraid my stomach would reject anything richer after weeks of scavenging. Then I crawled between clean sheets and fell into a dreamless sleep. I woke disoriented at 3 a.m., panicking that I'd dreamed everything. I fumbled for lights, heart racing until the luxurious room came into focus. I spent the remainder of the night sitting by the window, watching the city lights, afraid to sleep again in case reality shifted back. Morning brought Lawrence and a female colleague he introduced as Diane Collins. Together, they escorted me to their firm's offices in a sleek building overlooking Central Park. Before proceeding further, Lawrence explained in a conference room, "We need to verify your identity. Standard procedure, especially with estates of this magnitude." I provided identification and submitted to a DNA test. Walter anticipated trust issues, Lawrence explained as a technician swabbed my cheek. He left DNA samples to confirm familial relationships. While waiting for preliminary results, Lawrence shared more about my uncle. Walter made his fortune in European tech startups during the early 2000s. He had an uncanny ability to identify innovation before markets caught on. "Why me?" I asked. I wasn't close to him. Diane spoke for the first time. Walter kept extensive journals. He wrote that he saw himself in you. He followed your career from afar and was particularly impressed with your resilience. "Not resilient enough," I muttered, thinking of my recent homelessness. "On the contrary," Diane countered. "Walter believed true character emerges in crisis. He was most impressed by how you handled yourself during the divorce proceedings." "I lost everything," I said bitterly. "You maintained your dignity," Diane replied. That mattered to Walter. The DNA results arrived, confirming my identity. Lawrence then outlined the inheritance structure, a trust designed to provide immediate financial relief while protecting the bulk of the assets. "There's an immediate disbursement of $500,000, he explained. "The remaining assets transfer gradually over 5 years to prevent exploitation." The unspoken implication hung in the air, to protect me from people like Nathan. "Walter left this for you," Diane said, sliding an envelope across the table. Inside was a handwritten letter. The paper trembled in my hands as I read. "Sophia, if you're reading this, I've finally lost my battle with cancer. I regret not reconnecting during my life, but family complications made that difficult. I've watched your journey from afar with pride, including your recent struggles. The world can be cruel to those who don't play by its rules. I've arranged for you to receive not just financial resources, but connections to people who understand what you've endured. Use this inheritance not just to rebuild, but to redefine your life on your terms. The only condition I impose is that you consider, when you're ready, how to help others who face similar injustices. Your loving uncle, Walter." Attached to the letter was a photograph I'd never seen before. Walter holding me as a baby, both of us smiling at the camera. "There's one more thing," Lawrence said hesitantly. "Walter hired investigators to document your ex-husband's actions during your divorce. The evidence is extensive and troubling. It's yours if you want it." I stared at the manila folder he pushed toward me, my uncle's final gift, threatening to reopen wounds barely beginning to heal. I was struggling to process so many unexpected twists at once. During those long nights on park benches, I'd never imagined that someone had been watching over me, especially someone I barely knew. As I looked at the folder containing evidence against Nathan, a strange calm settled over me. For the first time in years, I had options. If you've ever experienced that moment when your life suddenly pivots from despair to possibility, you know exactly what I was feeling. It's almost too overwhelming to process. If you're finding value in my story so far, I'd appreciate you hitting that like button. Your support helps me share these difficult truths with others who might be silently suffering through similar situations. Let's continue with what happened next. 2 weeks after meeting Lawrence, I moved into a modest one-bedroom apartment in Chelsea. Though I could afford more, the thought of living in a large space alone terrified me after months of homelessness. I needed walls close enough to touch, to remind myself they were real. Setting up new financial accounts proved challenging. Without credit history or recent employment, banks treated me suspiciously, despite Lawrence's documentation. Eventually, we established accounts with appropriate controls to manage the initial $500,000 disbursement. Lawrence introduced me to Emma Davidson, a financial advisor specializing in clients recovering from financial abuse. Emma didn't mince words at our first meeting. "Your situation is unfortunately common," she said, reviewing my financial history. "Spouses with narcissistic tendencies often use money as their primary control mechanism." "I have a graduate degree in marketing," I said defensively. "I should have seen the warning signs." "Financial abuse crosses all educational and socio-economic boundaries," Emma replied, not unkindly. "Your ex-husband had years to implement his control. It was systematic and deliberate. Stop blaming yourself." Over the following weeks, Emma helped me establish a financial security framework: separate accounts with different institutions, investments with varying access restrictions, and comprehensive monitoring services. "The goal isn't just security," Emma explained. "It's rebuilding your financial confidence. You need to trust yourself with money again." While establishing financial stability was straightforward, emotional recovery proved more complicated. I found myself hoarding food in my apartment, stuffing granola bars into drawers and hiding canned goods under the bed. I'd wake in panic at 3 a.m., convinced I was back on the streets. I'd check my bank balances obsessively, unable to believe the numbers wouldn't suddenly disappear. At Emma's recommendation, I started seeing Dr. Carolyn Hayes, a therapist specializing in trauma recovery. "You're experiencing post-traumatic stress," Dr. Hayes explained during our first session. "Your body and mind are still in survival mode." "But I'm safe now," I argued, gesturing to my clean clothes and healthy appearance. "I have more money than I could ever need." "Safety isn't just physical," she replied. "Your sense of security, identity, and trust were systematically destroyed. Your brain needs time to recognize that the danger has passed." Through therapy, I began recognizing patterns in my relationship with Nathan that I'd previously normalized. The gradual isolation from friends, the subtle undermining of my professional confidence, the financial control disguised as taking care of things for us. "He made me believe I was incapable," I told Dr. Hayes during one session. "The worst part is that I believed him." "That's how coercive control works," she responded. "It's particularly effective against capable, independent people. The more competent you are, the more satisfying it is for controllers to break you down." While processing my personal trauma, I began researching Nathan's current life. Social media revealed he and Jennifer had announced their engagement 3 months after our divorce was finalized. His company had promoted him to senior vice president. They'd purchased a brownstone in Park Slope, the neighborhood I'd always dreamed of living in. Their life looked perfect, untouched by consequences. The injustice burned, rekindling fantasies of revenge that kept me awake at night. I imagined exposing Nathan publicly, destroying his reputation as he'd destroyed mine. I pictured Jennifer, realizing too late that she'd aligned herself with a predator. "Revenge fantasies are normal," Dr. Hayes assured me when I reluctantly shared these thoughts. "They're your mind's way of seeking justice. The question is whether acting on them would truly heal you or simply continue the cycle." While wrestling with these emotions, I met with Emma to discuss my professional future. Marketing firms are still rejecting my applications, I explained. Nathan's influence in the industry runs deep. Emma considered this. Have you thought about creating a new professional identity? Not legally changing your name, but establishing a presence in adjacent industries where Nathan has less influence. This suggestion sparked an unexpected meeting with Lawrence about Uncle Walter's unfinished business. Your uncle was investing in a tech startup focused on financial abuse protection before his illness progressed, Lawrence explained. The company developed an app that helps people identify and escape financially controlling relationships. The synchronicity was startling. This was before my divorce? Walter began the investment 3 years ago, Lawrence confirmed. The timing is coincidental, though Walter would probably call it cosmic justice. The startup, Safe Exit Financial, needed additional funding and marketing expertise. As I reviewed their business plan, I felt a stirring of my former professional passion. This could help people like me before they end up homeless, I told Lawrence. Before they lose everything. That was Walter's hope, he agreed. He thought you might want to continue his work someday. For the first time since inheriting the money, I felt purpose beyond survival. I arranged meetings with Safe Exit's founders and began developing a marketing strategy, leveraging my own experience. Working gave structure to my days and redirected my focus from Nathan to something constructive. I also created a new professional identity as Sophia Walter, honoring my uncle, while creating separation from the reputation Nathan had tarnished. The distance from Sophia Morgan gave me freedom to rebuild without constantly defending myself against previous allegations. Creating a professional alias isn't hiding, Dr. Hayes assured me when I expressed guilt about the strategy. It's establishing boundaries between your personal trauma and your professional contributions. Your experience will inform your work without defining it. 6 months after inheriting my uncle's fortune, I began emerging from survival mode. I was eating regularly, sleeping through most nights, and actively participating in life again. The food hoarding decreased, though I still kept emergency supplies just in case. I'd made one friend in my building, an elderly woman named Ruth, who never asked why I checked my locks 3 times before bed. I still avoided my old neighborhoods and jumped at unexpected sounds. I still dreamed of homelessness and woke shaking. But increasingly, I also dreamed of the future. Safe Exit's app was progressing toward beta testing. My apartment had begun feeling like home. I'd even adopted a cat from a shelter, a scrawny tabby with trust issues that mirrored my own. One evening, as I worked late on Safe Exit marketing materials, Lawrence called with unexpected news. Sophia, there's something about your uncle's network you should know. Are you available to meet tomorrow? His serious tone triggered my anxiety, but I agreed. Little did I know that meeting would completely transform my understanding of Walter's legacy and open doors to justice I hadn't imagined possible. 6 months into my new life, I barely resembled the woman who had once slept on park benches. My investment in Safe Exit Financial was proving both financially and emotionally rewarding. The app was gaining attention in tech circles for its innovative approach to financial security for abuse survivors. More importantly, I'd developed a genuine friendship with Emma that extended beyond our professional relationship. She'd invited me to her book club, where I met other professional women who knew nothing of my past. For a few hours each month, I was just Sophia, not an abuse survivor or an heiress or Nathan's ex-wife. I'd created a carefully curated public profile as Sophia Walter, financial safety advocate. My marketing strategies for Safe Exit focused on empowerment rather than victimhood, drawing from my own journey without explicitly referencing it. I'd given one interview to a tech magazine about the app, with my face partially obscured by stylish hair and strategic lighting enough to be credible without being immediately recognizable to former colleagues. This protective bubble burst on a Tuesday morning at my favorite coffee shop. I was reviewing Safe Exit's latest user metrics when someone called my name, my real name. Sophia? Sophia Morgan? I froze, coffee halfway to my lips, as Michael Chen, my former creative director at Archer & Klein, approached my table. I hadn't seen him since the day I was escorted from the building. my personal items in a cardboard box. It is you, he said, his expression shifting between surprise and discomfort. You look different. Good, different. I set down my cup carefully. Hello, Michael. He gestured to the empty chair across from me. May I? I nodded, my heart racing. Michael had never been unkind during the scandal, but he hadn't defended me either. I almost didn't recognize you, he said, settling in. Your hair, the clothes. He trailed off, eyes darting to my designer watch and leather portfolio. Things change, I replied neutrally. How are you? Fine, fine. Still at A&K, though thinking about moving on. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. Listen, about what happened. There were rumors afterward that something wasn't right about the evidence. Some of us suspected Nathan might have been involved, but by then you were gone and the damage was done. My pulse quickened. And now? Michael shrugged. Water under the bridge, I suppose. I was surprised to hear you were back on your feet so quickly. There's been talk. What kind of talk? I kept my expression neutral. Just, curious about your sudden reversal of fortune. He glanced again at my expensive accessories. Someone mentioned seeing you coming out of the Blackwood and Phillips offices. Aren't they that boutique firm that handles ultra-high net worth estates? I made a non-committal sound, mentally cataloging who might be watching me and reporting back to my former circle. Michael continued chatting, fishing for information while pretending at casual conversation. I revealed nothing substantial, and he eventually left with obvious disappointment. That evening, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Enjoying Uncle's money? We should catch up. The message triggered an immediate panic attack. I called Dr. Hayes, who talked me through breathing exercises until I could speak coherently again. How did he find out? I gasped when I could finally form words. The how doesn't matter right now, Dr. Hayes replied calmly. What matters is establishing boundaries. You don't owe him a response or explanation. But the text continued over the next few days. Heard you're going by Walter now. Cute tribute. Jennifer says hi. She feels terrible about everything. We should talk about your new app. Sounds interesting. After consulting with Dr. Hayes, I agreed to meet Nathan at a public restaurant of my choosing. Not to reconcile, I clarified, but to definitively close this chapter. I selected Le Bernardin, an upscale restaurant where I knew the maitre d' from a previous marketing campaign. I arranged for a table in the center of the room and arrived in a chauffeur-driven car, wearing a custom Chanel suit that cost more than Nathan's monthly mortgage payment. I watched through the window as Nathan arrived, checking his reflection in the restaurant's glass door before entering. He spotted me immediately, his practiced smile faltering slightly at my transformed appearance. Sophia, he said, leaning in for a kiss I deftly avoided by extending my hand instead. You look amazing. Success suits you. Thank you for coming, Nathan, I replied coolly, gesturing for him to sit. Nathan ordered expensive wine without consulting me, then launched into reminiscences about the good times in our marriage. I remained silent, allowing him to fill the space with increasingly desperate attempts at charm. You know, he said after his second glass, I've been thinking about us a lot lately, about the mistakes I made. Have you? I took a deliberate sip of water, leaving my wine untouched. We had something special before things got complicated. Now that you're back on your feet impressively so, I might add, I wonder if we could start fresh. His hand inched toward mine across the table. I withdrew my hand smoothly. Why would I want that, Nathan? Because we know each other. Because despite everything, there's still a connection. His smile turned intimate. I've missed you, Sophia. For a moment, I saw the man I'd fallen in love with. Charming, attentive, seemingly vulnerable. Then I blinked and saw the calculation behind his eyes, the slight tension in his jaw that appeared when he wasn't getting his way. How's Jennifer? I asked innocently. He barely flinched. It's complicated. She's not as intellectually stimulating as you. We don't have the same connection. Yet you're engaged. His expression shifted subtly. Engagements can be broken, especially now that circumstances have changed. My circumstances, you mean? Not yours. Nathan leaned forward. Let's be practical, Sophia. We were good together. Great, even. What happened was unfortunate, but we've both grown, and now you have resources that could benefit us both. Us both, I repeated, the final pieces clicking into place. Your firm is struggling, isn't it? His smile tightened. The market has been volatile. Nothing serious. Serious enough to reconsider a relationship you destroyed. Serious enough to potentially leave your pregnant fiancé. Nathan's glass paused halfway to his lips. How did you know Jennifer is pregnant? I didn't, I replied, satisfaction blooming as his mask slipped. But I do now. I stood, placing my napkin beside my untouched plate. This was illuminating, Nathan. Thank you for confirming what I needed to know. Sophia, wait. He grabbed my wrist, his fingers digging into my skin. Remove your hand, I said quietly, or I'll signal the security guard watching us from the bar. The one I specifically requested when I made reservations. Nathan released me, his charm evaporating. You've changed. Yes, I agreed. I have. I walked out, leaving him with the substantial check. In the car, I exhaled slowly, feeling lighter than I had in years. Nathan no longer had power over me, emotional, financial, or otherwise. That night, I received a tearful call from Jennifer. He admitted everything, she sobbed. He said he only approached you for money because his investments failed. He said he never loved me like he loved you. Instead of satisfaction, I felt unexpected compassion. Jennifer, listen to me. This isn't about love for Nathan. It's about control and resources. He pursued me when I was successful in marketing. He pursued you when I was destroyed and you were available. Now he's trying to come back because I have money. Do you see the pattern? I'm 4 months pregnant, she whispered. I don't know what to do. You don't have to decide anything tonight, I said gently. But whatever you decide, be careful. Nathan doesn't respond well to losing control. After we hung up, I contacted Lawrence to discuss what I'd learned about Nathan's financial situation. His investigators confirmed my suspicions. Nathan's firm was under investigation for regulatory violations, and he personally was over-leveraged in high-risk investments that were failing. His pursuit of me wasn't about lingering feelings, it was financial desperation, disguised as reconciliation. The knowledge should have been satisfying, but instead left me feeling hollow. I'd spent months fantasizing about Nathan facing consequences, but now that it was happening, revenge felt less sweet than anticipated. I was free of him, rebuilding my life, while he remained trapped in patterns of deception and control. That realization was more powerful than any revenge I could engineer. Just when I thought the evening couldn't get more emotionally complicated, Lawrence called with urgent news. The Shadow Network meeting he'd been arranging was scheduled for tomorrow. They rarely convene in person, he explained, but they're making an exception for Walter's niece. The Shadow Network, I repeated, the mysterious name sending a shiver of anticipation down my spine. Will you finally tell me who they are? Better, Lawrence replied. Tomorrow, you'll meet them yourself. I know what it's like when someone who once controlled your life suddenly reappears. That moment when you realize they no longer have power over you is both terrifying and liberating. If you've experienced something similar, I'd love to hear about your moment of clarity in the comments. Did you have that sudden realization that they couldn't hurt you anymore? Sometimes sharing these moments helps others recognize their own strength. Let me continue with what happened next. The following evening, Lawrence picked me up in a discreet black car. Where are we going? I asked as we headed toward the Upper East Side. A private residence, he replied. The network prefers meeting on their territory. We arrived at a stately brownstone with no identifying features beyond a small brass plaque reading Wellington Trust beside the door. Lawrence used a key card to enter, leading me into an elegant foyer where a silver-haired woman in a tailored suit waited. Sophia, Lawrence said, this is Judge Diane Collins. She's one of the network's founding members. I recognized her immediately from our brief meeting at Lawrence's office months earlier. You're a judge? Retired now, Diane replied, extending her hand. I served on the New York State Supreme Court for 22 years. She led us to an elevator hidden behind what appeared to be a bookshelf. Walter spoke highly of you, she said as we descended. He was particularly impressed by your resilience during the divorce proceedings. The elevator opened directly into a wood-paneled conference room where 3 people were already seated. Lawrence made introductions. Marcus Winters, technology sector. A distinguished black man in his 50s nodded. I recognized the name immediately. Marcus Winters was a tech pioneer who'd revolutionized cybersecurity before selling his company for billions. Sarah Chen, political strategy. An elegant Asian American woman smiled warmly. I'd seen her interviewed on news programs as an expert on public policy. James Rivera, former professional athlete, now philanthropist. The youngest of the group, a Latino man, perhaps a few years older than me, stood to shake my hand. His name was vaguely familiar from sports headlines years ago. Please sit, Diane gestured to an empty chair. We have much to discuss. Lawrence took the seat beside me as Diane began. Sophia, what do you know about your Uncle Walter's work beyond his investments? Very little, I admitted. I knew him briefly as a child, then lost touch. I've learned more since his passing than I ever knew during his life. Diane nodded. Walter was a founding member of what we call the Shadow Network. We are, in simplest terms, a group of powerful individuals who have all survived some form of abuse or exploitation. We use our resources to help others escape similar situations. Walter escaped an abusive father, Marcus explained. He found me when my first company was being systematically undermined by a manipulative business partner who had also been my abuser for years. He found me when I was attempting to leave my politically connected husband who had threatened to destroy my career if I left, Sarah added. And me when my coach was sabotaging my career after I refused his advances, James finished. Walter had an uncanny ability to identify people in controlled situations and offer precisely the resources needed to escape. I looked around the table, suddenly understanding. He was doing the same for me, wasn't he? Watching my divorce unfold, preparing to intervene. Yes, Diane confirmed. Though he hoped you would escape without intervention, Walter believed in allowing people to fight their own battles when possible. He only stepped in when the system was too corrupted against them, which it was in your case, Lawrence added. Your ex-husband's connections created an uneven playing field in the divorce proceedings. Walter began making arrangements to help you, Marcus continued, but his cancer progressed faster than expected. He made us promise to continue his work on your behalf. So, the inheritance, the trust structure, the investigators. All Walter's plan, Sarah confirmed. Though the network has supplemented his efforts since his passing. We've been monitoring your progress, James said. Your work with Safe Exit aligns perfectly with our mission. You've been watching me? I tensed, uncomfortable with the surveillance implications. Diane noticed my reaction. Walter had a protective instinct that sometimes overrode personal boundaries. It's something we've discussed extensively within the network. I appreciate the help, I said carefully, but I don't like being monitored without consent. A valid criticism, Diane acknowledged. Walter operated under old-school methodologies. The younger members, she nodded toward James, have been pushing for more transparent approaches. That's partly why we wanted to meet in person, James explained. To offer you direct access to the network rather than passive protection. Access for what purpose? I asked. Your choice, Marcus replied. Some members use our resources for personal security as they rebuild their lives. Others, like Walter, become active participants in helping others escape control. And some, Sarah added, use our collective influence to address systemic issues that facilitate abuse. Policy changes, judicial reform, business ethics advancement. What about Nathan? I asked bluntly. Is that why you've been investigating him? The members exchanged glances before Diane answered. Walter was particularly concerned about potential retaliation. Your ex-husband lost significant control when you left, and control-oriented individuals typically escalate when their power is threatened. We have extensive documentation of his activities, Lawrence added, sliding a folder across the table. Financial misconduct, ethical violations, potentially criminal behavior. I stared at the folder, remembering the one Lawrence had offered months earlier. I hadn't been ready then. Now, I wasn't sure if examining Nathan's transgressions would free me or bind me more tightly to our past. What would Walter want me to do with this? I asked quietly. Walter would want you to make your own choice, Diane replied. He believed justice takes different forms for different people. Some need public vindication, Marcus said. Others find peace in private resolution. And some, Sarah added, discover that helping others is more healing than any direct action against their abuser. I opened the folder, scanning its contents. Financial records showing Nathan's misappropriation of client funds, evidence of his deliberate sabotage of my career, testimonials from other women he'd manipulated professionally and personally. There are more victims, I murmured, noting a statement from Karen Davis, a woman Nathan had dated before me. Unfortunately, yes, Lawrence confirmed. Your ex-husband has a pattern of targeting successful women, undermining them professionally, then discarding them when they no longer serve his purposes. And Jennifer? I asked, thinking of her tearful phone call. Appears to be his next victim, Diane said gravely. Though her pregnancy complicates matters. I closed the folder, suddenly decisive. I don't want revenge. I want justice, not just for me, but for everyone he's hurt. The network members nodded approvingly. That's why Walter chose you as his heir, Diane said. He recognized that same sense of justice in you. For the next 2 hours, the network shared their stories, how Walter had found them, how they'd escaped their abusers, how they'd rebuilt their lives, and joined his mission. Each account resonated with aspects of my own experience, creating a sense of belonging I hadn't felt since before my divorce. As the meeting concluded, Marcus asked the critical question, "Will you join us, Sophia? The network could use someone with your marketing expertise and personal insight." I thought about the difference between revenge and justice, how one focused narrowly on past wounds, while the other looked toward future healing. I thought about other women like me, trapped in situations they couldn't escape alone. I thought about Jennifer, pregnant and vulnerable to the same tactics Nathan had used against me. Yes, I decided, but I want to do this my way. No surveillance without consent, no shadowy interventions unless absolutely necessary. I want to create systems that empower people to save themselves. Walter would approve. Diane smiled. He always said true liberation comes from within, not from external rescue. As we prepared to leave, Jennifer texted me. He's becoming more controlling, monitoring my spending, checking my phone. I'm scared. I showed the message to the group. This can't wait. She needs help now. Then let's help her, James said simply. Your first official network action. Together, we began formulating a plan to help Jennifer exit safely, not out of revenge against Nathan, but out of genuine concern for her well-being and that of her unborn child. For the first time, I felt the full weight of Walter's legacy, not just financial resources, but a profound responsibility to use those resources in service of justice. As we worked late into the night, I realized I'd crossed a threshold. I was no longer defined by what Nathan had taken from me, but by what Walter had entrusted to me and what I would do with that trust. Over the next 6 months, Safe Exit Financial transformed from a promising startup into a recognized innovator in the financial security space. Under my marketing direction as Sophia Walter, we expanded beyond the initial app to develop comprehensive educational resources for abuse survivors. What few knew was that behind the scenes, the Shadow Network provided crucial support from technical expertise to legal protection. Marcus Winters personally reviewed our security protocols, while Diane Collins connected us with advocacy groups needing our services. The app's growing reputation attracted attention from major financial institutions looking to partner with us. Among them, surprisingly, was Hamilton Reed Nathan's investment firm. "It's perfect," Sarah Chen said during our network strategy meeting. "They have no idea you're behind Safe Exit." "Isn't it risky?" I questioned. "Nathan could recognize me." "Not necessarily," Lawrence replied. "You're operating under a different name, and your public presence has been limited to partial photos and written statements. Besides, Nathan has never shown interest in the technical aspects of deals, only taking credit for them afterward. After careful consideration, we decided to pursue the connection. Hamilton Reed, desperate for positive press amid rumors of internal financial misconduct, was eager to associate with a socially conscious fintech company. My team, led by Emma Davidson, handled initial negotiations while I remained in the background. As expected, Nathan assigned a junior associate to the detail work while positioning himself to take credit at the final signing. Meanwhile, the network had helped Jennifer develop an exit strategy. After documenting Nathan's increasingly controlling behavior, she'd secured a private apartment with network support and prepared for a carefully timed departure once the Hamilton Reed deal was finalized. Karen Davis, Nathan's ex-girlfriend whom I'd discovered in the network's files, had also come forward with her story. Together with 3 other former colleagues who'd experienced Nathan's manipulation, we built a comprehensive picture of his pattern of abuse. It's not about revenge, I reminded myself daily. It's about stopping a predator. The pivotal moment came during the final contract meeting at Safe Exit's offices. Nathan attended personally, eager to claim association with the buzzy startup. He arrived flanked by 2 associates, his trademark confident smile firmly in place as he surveyed our conference room. I watched through a one-way observation window as Emma led introductions. Then, right before signing, I entered the room. "I apologize for my lateness," I said smoothly. "Sophia Walter, CEO of Safe Exit Financial." Nathan's pen froze mid-signature. His eyes darted from my face to the documents and back again, confusion slowly morphing to recognition. "You?" he finally managed. "Me," I confirmed pleasantly. "I don't believe we've been formally introduced in this context, Mr. Harrison." Nathan's associates shifted uncomfortably as he visibly struggled to compose himself. "I wasn't aware you were involved with this company." "Founder and CEO," I clarified. Safe Exit was created specifically to help people recognize and escape financially abusive relationships. I maintained steady eye contact, something I'm personally passionate about. The tension in the room was palpable as Nathan's mind visibly raced through implications. "Perhaps we should reschedule," he finally suggested, half rising. "That won't be necessary," I replied, "unless Hamilton Reed is uncomfortable partnering with a company led by someone with my particular expertise." The trap was perfectly set. If Nathan objected, he would need to explain his history with me to his colleagues. If he proceeded, he would be directly funding a platform designed to expose people like himself. "Of course not," he said stiffly, resuming his seat. "Your personal background is irrelevant to the deal's merits." "Excellent," I smiled. "Then let's proceed." Throughout the remainder of the meeting, Nathan's composure gradually unraveled. His hands trembled slightly, sweat beaded at his temples. When Emma deliberately mentioned upcoming features designed to identify financial predators in professional settings, he knocked over his water glass. After signing, Nathan cornered me as others filed out. "What exactly are you playing at?" he hissed. His charming facade completely dropped. "I'm not playing at anything," I replied calmly. "I'm running a successful company that helps abuse survivors. That's all." "This is about revenge," he accused. "No, Nathan, it's about justice. There's a difference." His face contorted with barely controlled rage. "You think you've won? You have no idea what I'm capable of when threatened." "Actually, I do," I replied, maintaining steady eye contact. "I've lived it. The difference is that now, I'm not facing it alone." On cue, Marcus Winters entered the room. "Everything all right here, Sophia?" Nathan immediately shifted personas, extending his hand. "Nathan Harrison, I don't believe we've met." "We haven't," Marcus replied coolly, ignoring the outstretched hand. "But I know your work, intimately." The implied threat wasn't lost on Nathan, whose eyes darted between us. "Well, I should join my colleagues. We have another meeting." As he hurried out, Marcus turned to me. "You handled that perfectly." "It still affects me," I admitted, my hands trembling now that Nathan was gone. Seeing him, hearing his voice, part of me is still that homeless woman on a park bench. "That part kept you alive," Marcus said gently. "Honor it, but don't let it drive." That evening, Jennifer executed her exit plan. With network support, she moved to her prepared apartment while Nathan was working late, taking essential documents and personal belongings. By the time he returned home, she had left a simple note. I know everything. Don't contact me except through my attorney. Nathan's reaction was predictably volatile. He called Jennifer repeatedly, alternating between threats and pleas. When she didn't respond, he appeared at her workplace, causing a scene that required security intervention. Each incident was carefully documented, building a case for a restraining order. Meanwhile, the Hamilton-Reed partnership proceeded, with Nathan noticeably sidelined by his superiors following his erratic behavior at our meeting. Internal sources reported he was under review for professional concerns, a development accelerated by anonymous tips regarding his handling of client accounts. 3 other women from Nathan's firm confidentially reported sexual harassment through SafeExit's newly launched corporate accountability portal. Their testimonies revealed a pattern consistent with Karen's and mine. Initial mentorship, followed by isolation, undermining, and exploitation. The evidence against Nathan mounted, not through my direct action, but as a consequence of creating safe channels for truth to emerge. I took no personal satisfaction in his downfall. Instead, I felt a solemn responsibility to ensure the system that had failed me would not fail others. Jennifer gave birth to a healthy daughter she named Lily. Though our shared history with Nathan made our relationship complicated, we developed a tentative friendship based on mutual understanding of what we'd survived. I judged you unfairly, she admitted during a coffee meeting shortly after Lily's birth. Nathan convinced me you were unstable, professionally jealous of him. I believed him because it was easier than questioning my own choices. He's very convincing, I acknowledged, watching Lily sleep peacefully in her carrier. That's what makes men like him dangerous. What happens now? Jennifer asked. The firm is investigating him. There are rumors about criminal charges. Justice happens, I replied. Not because I'm orchestrating it, but because truth naturally emerges when safe spaces exist to speak it. The network continued monitoring the situation, ensuring Jennifer's safety and supporting the women coming forward. Nathan's professional reputation deteriorated as investigations into his conduct expanded beyond Hamilton-Reed to regulatory authorities. 6 months after our confrontation, Nathan Harrison was placed on administrative leave pending investigation of financial misconduct. His engagement to Jennifer was publicly ended, his social media abruptly silent. The man who had once seemed untouchable was experiencing the natural consequences of years of exploitation. I took no direct action against him, beyond creating platforms that exposed truth. My focus remained on expanding SafeExit's reach and working with the network to identify others needing assistance. The justice unfolding wasn't my revenge, it was the natural restoration of balance, long disturbed by Nathan's actions. As Walter had written in his letter to me, true justice isn't orchestrated. It's the inevitable result of empowering truth to speak freely without fear. 1 year after discovering my inheritance, I barely recognized my former self. SafeExit had grown into a respected platform serving thousands of abuse survivors. I had transitioned from behind-the-scenes leadership to becoming a cautious public advocate, sharing edited versions of my story to help others recognize warning signs I had missed. My role within the Shadow Network expanded as well. Working with Diane, Sarah, and Marcus, I developed a systematic approach to identifying and assisting those trapped in financially abusive situations. We established a shelter specifically for survivors of economic abuse, named in Walter's honor. He would hate having his name on a building, Diane chuckled during the private opening ceremony. Walter always preferred working in the shadows. Maybe it's time to bring these issues into the light, I countered. The shame and secrecy only protect abusers. My personal healing continued through regular therapy with Dr. Hayes. The panic attacks diminished. The food hoarding ceased. I still kept emergency cash in various locations, but Dr. Hayes assured me this was prudent rather than pathological. Preparedness differs from paranoia, she explained. One empowers, the other imprisons. Jennifer's journey paralleled mine in some ways. With network support, she returned to school while raising Lily, pursuing the psychology degree she'd abandoned when meeting Nathan. We met monthly for coffee, our initial awkwardness gradually evolving into genuine care. "I found your apology letter," I told her during one meeting. "The one you sent after moving out from Nathan's." Jennifer winced, adjusting Lily on her lap. I was still making excuses for him then, blaming myself for not being good enough to fix him. "I understand," I assured her. "I spent years believing if I just tried harder, loved more perfectly, Nathan would become the person I thought he was." "How do you forgive yourself for such a massive blind spot?" she asked, the question clearly sincere. I considered carefully before answering. "I don't think it's about forgiveness, it's about recognition, understanding the vulnerable places in yourself that were expertly targeted, then strengthening those places without walling them off completely." Forgiving Jennifer had been difficult but necessary for my own healing. Her betrayal had been real, but so had her manipulation by Nathan. Holding on to anger only maintained his power over both of us. While Jennifer and I rebuilt our lives, Nathan's continued unraveling. The regulatory investigation expanded to include criminal elements. Former clients came forward with allegations of fund mismanagement. His colleagues distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with mounting scandals. I was careful to maintain ethical boundaries despite numerous opportunities for direct revenge. When a journalist contacted me about providing statements for an exposé on Nathan, I declined, directing them instead to public records and official investigations. When Hamilton Reed's board sought my testimony regarding Nathan's conduct, I provided only factual accounts of documented incidents. "You're showing remarkable restraint," Lawrence observed. "Many in your position would want to twist the knife." "Revenge would give him power again," I explained. "Make it about our personal history rather than his pattern of misconduct. The truth is damning enough without my embellishment." 6 months after the Hamilton Reed partnership, I discovered a safety deposit box key among Walter's personal effects. The box contained journals spanning decades, documenting Walter's journey from abuse victim to successful investor to network founder. The final journal included a sealed letter addressed to me, dated shortly before his death. "Sophia, by now you've likely encountered the choice between justice and revenge. This crossroads defines how trauma shapes us. Revenge focuses backward, consuming the present to rectify the past. Justice looks forward, using the past to create a better future. I chose justice after years wasted on revenge. It nearly destroyed me before I recognized that freedom comes not from making abusers suffer, but from breaking their power to define our lives. Whatever you choose, remember, your value was never determined by Nathan's assessment, your parents' expectations, or even my inheritance. It exists independently, permanently, irrevocably. Your loving uncle, Walter." The letter crystallized my approach moving forward. I would pursue justice not just for myself, but systematically for others, creating structures that prevented abuse, rather than merely punishing abusers after damage was done. With this clarity, I purchased a house, not the brownstone in Park Slope that Nathan and Jennifer had bought during our divorce, but a light-filled Victorian in Hudson Valley, where I could see stars at night. I filled it not with status symbols, but with personally meaningful items. Books that had sustained me during homelessness, art from survivors supported by network programs, photographs of chosen family rather than biological relations. For the first time since my divorce, I began dating again. David Mason, an architect I met through a network fundraiser, showed remarkable patience with my trust issues. Unlike Nathan's love-bombing intensity, David's interest manifested in consistent small kindnesses and respect for my boundaries. "I'm still dealing with significant baggage," I warned him after our third date. "Everyone worth knowing has baggage," he replied simply. "It's how we carry it that matters." With Dr. Hayes' guidance, I learned to distinguish between healthy caution and hypervigilance in relationships. When David asked for my input on a project budget, I braced for financial control tactics. Instead, he genuinely sought my expertise, acknowledging my financial acumen without threat to his ego. Nathan would have presented the budget as perfect, then blamed me when problems arose, I told Dr. Hayes. David actually wants collaboration. That's the difference between partnership and possession, she observed. Nathan saw relationships as ownership. David sees them as alliance. The shadow network became my chosen family, filling the void left by estranged relatives and friends lost during my downfall. We gathered monthly at Diane's townhouse, sharing successes and strategizing challenges. I found particular kinship with James Rivera, whose experience with public humiliation mirrored aspects of my own. The worst part wasn't the financial loss, he confided during one gathering. It was the public identity theft, having someone else define who you are in everyone's perception. Yes, I agreed. That's exactly it. Nathan didn't just take my money and career. He rewrote my story. But now you're writing a new one, James pointed out. One he can't touch. 2 years after inheriting Walter's fortune, I had transformed from survival mode to purposeful living. My network of support expanded beyond the shadow network to include other advocates, survivors, and professionals dedicated to combating financial abuse. I still carried scars from my experience. Certain sounds, keys jingling, a door slamming, could trigger momentary panic. I still checked my bank balances daily and maintained emergency preparations. But these responses no longer controlled my life. They had integrated into a new identity that incorporated both vulnerability and strength. When Nathan's case finally reached criminal court, I attended one session simply to prove to myself he no longer held power over me. He looked smaller than I remembered, diminished without his expensive suits and professional facade. Our eyes met briefly across the courtroom. I felt nothing but a distant sadness for the wreckage of potential his life represented. I left before proceedings concluded, walking into spring sunshine with a lightness I hadn't expected. Nathan would face legal consequences for his actions, but my healing had never depended on his punishment. It had come instead from reclaiming my narrative, rebuilding community, and redirecting trauma's energy toward constructive change. That evening, as I worked late in my home office, David called. "Tough day?" he asked, hearing something in my voice. "Actually, a good one," I replied. "I faced something important and found it had lost its power." "I'm proud of you," he said simply. Those 4 words, offered without qualification or expectation, represented everything my relationship with Nathan had lacked. Unconditional support, recognition of my journey rather than my utility, love without possession. Walter's inheritance had provided financial security, but the true gift had been the opportunity to discover my own resilience. Money had created breathing room for healing, but the transformation came from within, from choices made at each crossroads between bitterness and growth, isolation and connection, revenge and justice. The journey from that park bench to my current life hadn't been linear or perfect. I'd made mistakes, experienced setbacks, sometimes backslid into old patterns of fear and self-doubt. But with each challenge, I'd grown stronger, wiser, more determined to create meaning from suffering rather than being defined by it. In my darkest moments on the streets, I couldn't have imagined this future. Now I couldn't imagine returning to the woman I'd been before, not just before homelessness, but before the entire journey through marriage, betrayal, loss, and redemption. Walter had given me financial resources, but I had built something more valuable, a life aligned with purpose, surrounded by genuine relationships, focused on creating justice rather than pursuing revenge. This transformation wasn't just my personal victory. It was a roadmap I could now share with others, beginning their own journeys from victim to survivor to advocate. The cycle Walter had started would continue through me and beyond. Each person helped becoming a potential helper for others. Looking back from this vantage point, I realized that inheriting $47 million hadn't been the true turning point of my story. The real inheritance had been the chance to discover that my value had never been determined by Nathan's assessment, my bank balance, or my social status, but by my capacity for resilience, compassion, and growth through adversity. Family plays such a powerful role in shaping our lives, whether it's the family we're born into or the family we choose. My journey taught me that sometimes the most unexpected people become our greatest supporters. Have you ever had someone believe in you when you couldn't believe in yourself? That moment when someone sees your potential even when you're at your lowest point? If my story has resonated with you, please take a moment to like and subscribe. Your support helps me reach others who might need to hear that there's hope beyond their current circumstances. And if you have your own story of unexpected support or triumph after struggle, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. Now, let me share how this story comes full circle. 2 years after that life-changing moment on a park bench, I found myself sitting on that same bench on a crisp autumn afternoon. The symmetry wasn't planned. I'd been meeting with a potential safe exit partner nearby and felt drawn to revisit the place where my transformation began. Central Park bustled with the same energy. It always had joggers navigating around tourists, nannies pushing strollers, business people taking shortcuts through the greenery. I watched them with different eyes now, wondering about their hidden struggles, their invisible battles. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Hamilton Reed executive Nathan Harrison pleads guilty to financial crimes. I scanned the article detailing Nathan's plea agreement on multiple counts of fraud, misappropriation of client funds, and tax evasion. He faced significant fines and potential prison time. Surprisingly, I felt no satisfaction, just a quiet acknowledgement that systems sometimes work as they should. Nathan's downfall hadn't come from my revenge, but from the natural consequences of his own actions. Justice had unfolded without my orchestration, once safe channels for truth were established. Jennifer had completed her first year of graduate school, maintaining a 4 gigapascals while raising Lily, now a curious toddler. The Shadow Network had established a scholarship foundation specifically for abuse survivors seeking education, with Jennifer as its first recipient. My own foundation, the Walter Morgan Trust, provided grants to organizations developing innovative approaches to preventing financial abuse. We'd recently launched a curriculum for high schools teaching financial independence and healthy relationship economics concepts I wished I'd understood before meeting Nathan. As I sat reflecting, I noticed a woman on a nearby bench. Something in her posture, hunched shoulders, vigilant eyes, belongings clutched tightly triggered immediate recognition. She looked as I had 2 years earlier. Homeless, fearful, defeated. For several minutes, I observed her discreetly. She refused eye contact with passers-by, flinched when someone came too close, checked her surroundings, constantly behaviors I remembered from my own time on the streets. The defensive hypervigilance of someone who had lost everything. I approached carefully, maintaining respectful distance. "Excuse me," I said gently. "I hope this isn't inappropriate, but are you okay?" She regarded me suspiciously, likely accustomed to either harassment or patronizing charity. "I'm fine," she replied curtly. "I'm Sophia," I continued, sitting on the far end of her bench. 2 years ago, I was sitting where you are now, homeless, scared, with nowhere to go. Her expression shifted slightly from suspicion to cautious interest. "What happened?" "It's a long story," I smiled. "But it started with someone finding me here, much like I've found you." "I'm not looking for a savior," she said defensively. "Good," I replied, "because I'm not offering salvation, just connection. And maybe some practical help, if you're interested." Over the next hour, Melissa Davis shared pieces of her story. Like mine, it involved relationship abuse, though hers was complicated by medical bankruptcy after her abuser removed her from his insurance during cancer treatment. She'd been homeless for 5 weeks, having exhausted friends' couches and emergency assistance. "I never thought this would be me," she said, echoing words I'd spoken to Lawrence 2 years earlier. "I had a career, savings, plans." "I know," I said simply. "I know exactly." I offered Melissa what Lawrence had first offered me: a hotel room, a meal, and an opportunity to connect with resources. "No strings," I assured her, "no expectations. Just a chance to catch your breath and consider options." Her suspicion was familiar and appropriate. "Why would you help a stranger?" "Because someone did the same for me," I replied. "And because you're not actually a stranger, you're someone experiencing what I experienced. That creates a connection." At the Peninsula, the same hotel where I'd spent my first night off the streets, I watched Melissa experience the same overwhelming emotions: disbelief at the luxury, shame at her appearance, fear it might be a trick. I gave her privacy to shower and rest, leaving contact information and promising to return tomorrow if she wished. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked as I prepared to leave. "What do you get out of it?" "Continuation," I answered truthfully. "My uncle helped me when I couldn't help myself. He can't help anyone else now, but I can. It honors what he started." The next day, Melissa agreed to meet with Lawrence to discuss immediate options and long-term resources. Her situation was complicated, but not hopeless. The network had connections with oncologists who could continue her treatment, housing advocates who could secure temporary accommodations, and legal experts who could address the medical debt her ex-husband had manipulated her into accepting. "Is this some kind of organization?" she asked as we outlined available resources. "Something like that," I replied. "A network of people who've been where you are and found ways forward. No requirements except willingness to eventually help others when you're able." "Pay it forward," she murmured. "Exactly. Though we prefer continue the cycle, paying forward implies debt. This is about connection, not obligation." Over subsequent weeks, Melissa began rebuilding, accepting network assistance while maintaining independence. Her medical treatment resumed. Her legal situation improved. Her professional skills were evaluated for potential career redirection. 1 month after our bench meeting, she joined me for coffee. "I've been thinking about what you said about continuation," she began. "I was an HR director before everything fell apart. I know how employment systems work and how they fail people in crisis. Once I'm back on my feet, I could help others navigate those systems. The network could use that expertise," I acknowledged. "When you're ready." As Melissa recovered, I continued expanding Safe Exit and the Walter Morgan Trust, working with legislators on financial abuse protections while maintaining my role within the shadow network. David and I moved forward cautiously in our relationship, recently becoming engaged after a thoughtful conversation about partnership expectations. My life had transformed completely from that desperate day on the park bench. The money had provided security, but the true transformation came from purpose, from converting personal trauma into constructive change, from replacing shame with advocacy, from choosing connection over isolation. One evening, after a particularly impactful network meeting where we'd helped 3 families escape abusive situations, I visited Walter's grave in the small European cemetery where he'd been laid to rest. I placed white roses against the simple headstone and sat on the adjacent bench. "I understand now," I said quietly. "It wasn't about the money. It was never about the money. The inheritance that mattered wasn't the $47 million. It was the legacy of transformation, the recognition that trauma can either destroy or redirect a life, depending on the choices made at critical junctures. Walter had chosen to redirect his pain toward helping others. Now I had made the same choice, continuing a cycle that would extend beyond both our lifetimes. Each person helped would potentially help others, creating an expanding network of support and justice. As I left the cemetery, my phone rang. It was David. "How was your day?" he asked, his voice warm across the distance. "Significant," I replied, watching the setting sun paint the European countryside in gold. "I found another one." "Another what?" he asked. "Another link in the chain," I explained. "Another continuation." David understood immediately. "Walter would be proud of you." "No," I corrected gently. "He would be proud of us. All of us. The network he started, the connections we've built, the transformations we've supported." Walking back to my hotel, I felt Walter's presence not as a ghost, but as a legacy living through my actions. The true inheritance hadn't been deposited in my bank account, but integrated into my purpose. The recognition that justice emerges not from punishment, but from transformation of systems, of communities, and ultimately, of ourselves. From homeless to healing to helping others heal, the journey had come full circle. Not ending where it began, but spiraling upward, expanding outward, continuing the work Walter had started, and that I would eventually entrust to others. The money had been a tool, not the treasure. The real inheritance was the chance to transform trauma into purpose, isolation into community, and injustice into something that, while never perfect, was infinitely better than what had come before.